Burroway, chapter 5, fictional setting. This is a pretty deep chapter, so we're going to have a natural halfway point, and I think we'll just see where we are. If we don't get through it all, we can always save the back half, the second half, for the next time we're together. So, fictional setting. This is the setting in your story, and it gives information to the reader. It gives emotion. It illuminates your characters, and it suggests the story's symbolic meaning. And I've chosen this. Does anybody know where this image is from?
No, where is it from?
It's from a series of unfortunate events.
Oh,
It was it, but I didn't remember the baby.
Yeah. Which is, yeah, that the intro and outro of that show are just amazing. All right. In the book that we learned that a truly effective fictional setting might resemble one of the murals, like from the New Deal. And you guys may have seen this, especially being here in the River Valley. We have a number of places where these murals are found. Each character in the mural has his or her own story amidst a backdrop of a larger story. So we observe the figures, and we may see some social interaction between the figures, but we also see layers of history and social forces in evidence. So I've pulled one. This is from Cincinnati's Union Terminal. It's called The History of Cincinnati and the History of Transportation. I am going to make this one larger and just ask you guys, you know, what are you seeing here? What are you seeing about the characters, and then what are you seeing about the background?
they're working class, I would say, and
Well,
they're instrumentally involved in building a city or things in a city, especially transportation.
yeah,
and I see development.
period of time.
Development is good, Gloria. Yeah.
Goes everywhere from the pyramids to the skyscrapers, and from a tugboat to an airplane, a blimp and an airplane up there.
Yeah, so what might you interpret? For instance, I'm looking particularly at the railroad engineer here, who's got kind of a scowl on his face, right? And we see in the background, we see a plane, we see boats, we see buildings going up. So I'm also picking up, you know, maybe a loss here or some uncertainty or fear. And that's transition. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just thought this was a good example of, you know, the characters, and they're not really interacting, but kind of. And then we've got this setting in the background, these forces at play that are going to impact the characters, that are going to impact these people.
They're also all white.
Yes.
Which is interesting because, of course, what we do know about our history is that Black people were instrumentally involved in building everything. So,
and Asians with the railroads.
Yes.
And yeah, you're right. It's a synthesized version, I think of. Yeah. All right. So fictional setting, she kind of divides this up into two, you know, subcategories. One is atmosphere, time, place, and mood, and the other is aspects of narrative time. So we're going to start with atmosphere, and we're going to get into setting and tone. Setting can include the location, period, weather, time of day, and then tone is the attitude taken by the narrative voices or the characters that can be described in terms of mood, emotion, or quality, right? So it could be a scene or a book that has a sinister quality. Maybe it's satirical, maybe it's very formal or solemn or wry. So these two facets, setting and tone, are often mixed. For instance, a sinister atmosphere might be achieved partly by syntax, partly by rhythm, word choice, partly by the time of day, night, mist in the air, or a desolate landscape. You, as the writer, can orient your reader in place and time in two ways. You can do this with straight information or direct information and indirect information. And I liked Ms. Burroway's examples here, so I've got them. Straight information, she says, on the southern bank of the Bayou Teche in the summer of '69. That's very direct. We know where we are. Indirect would be coming at this scene with the bugs hung over the black water in clusters of a steady hum, right? So we're getting a different feeling of this story. So character and language are a product of place and culture, right? And I think the best example is like Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye, right? Like that is a very clear example of character and language being a product of place. If you think about the characters in, say, Harry Potter versus Stephen King's The Stand, you're going to see a huge difference in language and character. So any other examples that you guys would give where characters and language demonstrate atmosphere? Books you've read.
Jane Eyre, I think about, her character and being in that creepy house.
Yep.
Crazy wife in the attic. Very dark.
Yes.
You have this feeling reading it's very dark.
Foreboding, yeah. Anybody else?
The Hobbit.
The Hobbit, yeah.
That takes you into a whole different world.
That's right. That's fantastic. So language that expresses setting is going to carry clues about the ultimate meaning of the piece, and how the scene is described by you, the writer, can tell the reader a lot about mood. So I pulled 3 examples here, and I want you to pay attention to the words and phrases that give us a clue about what might happen, what the language is telling us about time and place, and how mood is communicated. This first one is from a book I just recently picked up called The Last House on Needless Street. And it's been a long time since a book has made me just sit down the whole day to finish it. Like I got up in the morning and I just had to finish the whole thing. So we're going to read a scene. I wasn't allowed to wait inside while they did it, so I stood out on the step. It was summer, bright and hot as the surface of a star. My skin burned slowly as the afternoon wore on. I listened as they pushed back the ugly blue rug in the living room, tore up the floorboards, and knocked a hole in the wall in the back of my closet because they thought it sounded hollow. Dogs were all over my yard, my bedroom, everything. I knew what kind of dogs they were. They had the white trees of death in their eyes. The police went away in the end. They had to, because I was at the 7-Eleven all afternoon and everyone says so. The security tape says so. So I would ask, what words and phrases tell us what might happen here?
They had the white trees of death in their eyes. I love that.
I did too. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, they think that she has a body hidden somewhere.
Right. This narrator did something wrong or is under suspicion.
Right. She's obviously very hostile toward them. Dogs went all over it seems like she's calling them dogs.
Yes. Yeah.
She's sort of dehumanizing these people. They're the enemy who's invading her space.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's outside and her skin is burning, it's almost like a metaphor, or
Could be. Yeah.
for what she's experiencing.
Yep.
There's
Go
a air of tension, violence. Really, they pushed back the ugly blue rug, knocked a hole. It's there's all this implied violence.
Right.
Yeah.
The mood is very, very much on edge, I would say. And I think the narrator is actually a man. the narrator here is also fairly immature. So, all right, next example. This is from Xilu Gao's A Concise Chinese English Dictionary. House is 2 floors lived by Cantonese family, housewife, husband who work as chef in Chinatown, and 16-year-old British accent son. Is like one child policy still carried on here. The garden is concrete, no any green things. Very often little wild grass growing and come out between the concretes, but housewife pull and kill the grass immediately. She is grass killer. The lush next door's trees trying to come through rusty iron fence, but nothing getting in this concrete family. The house like factory place in China, just for cheap laborers earning money, no life, no green, and no love. So what does language tell us about the time and place here and the character?
Yeah, I would say the narrator is probably foreign, probably Asian, just from the way the wording is set, and everything is very stark and crude and kind of I don't know, just kind of it's very stark. I think that's the big word that came to me.
Oh,
So Asian is correct. I'm sorry, was somebody else going to say something?
Obviously, English is a second language.
Yes.
right.
I'm concentrating on the British accent son, trying to place where that would be. I mean, obviously he was trained, educated somewhere to pick up that accent versus
It sounds like maybe Hong Kong.
excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Good idea. Yeah.
So to give you a broader context, the narrator here has just landed in London. She's been studying English for a while. She has her Chinese English dictionary she takes everywhere with her, and she's trying desperately to learn the language. I would say also this narrator is a little judgy, right? We're picking that up. And an observer, she's an astute observer of what's going on around her. She's in a heightened state of observation. It's a really good book. All right, last example here. This is from Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things. It was raining when Rahel came back from Iminem. Slanting silver ropes slammed into loose earth, plowing it up like gunfire. The old house on the hill wore its steep gabled roof, pulled over its ears like a low hat. The walls, streaked with moss, had grown soft and bulged a little with dampness that seeped up from the ground. The wild, overgrown garden was full of the whisper and scurry of small lives. In the undergrowth, a rat snake rubbed itself against a glistening stone. Hopeful yellow bullfrogs cruised the scummy pond for mates. A drenched mongoose flashed across the leaf-strewn driveway. This is very indirect, right? Where do you think this narrator might be?
India.
Yeah, good guess. That language. We're getting a tone.
Mongoose too.
Yeah, that's right, the mongoose. And you're getting a tone here. What are you picking up from the mood?
There's a sense of decay and things left in disarray, and it's sad, really. Sadness.
It's a very sad book. Yeah. Yeah.
And sense of foreboding.
Yes.
With
Yeah.
it plowing it up like gunfire.
Yes.
Kind of like, whoa.
I would say the narrator is very heavy. It's sad. All right. So that kind of wraps up setting and tone. Hopefully you're seeing how, words and phrases and language can help kind of establish where we are and the mood of the piece. Let's next get into harmony and conflict between character and setting. It's a pretty quick one. Think back to the mural. If character's in the foreground of fiction and setting is in the background, the two elements are going to either be in harmony or they're going to be in conflict. There's not a right or wrong way here. Often the character, the setting, the mood, they occur simultaneously, and setting can be manipulated to either mean the expected or the unexpected. So we're going to look at both. First one is going to be harmony. The rain comes and I feel it with the tips of my toes, but they are the only parts of me that get wet. For I have drawn my knees up to my chest under my nightgown, and my father has unbuttoned his corduroy jacket and pulled it around me and wrapped his arms around me too. I lean into him. I feel the heat from his body and the cool rain from the world, both at once. Margaret Wrinkle's Lake Migrations, actually essays, not fiction, but I thought it was a good scene that showed harmony. There's nothing here that's happening to the character that isn't expected. And then we have conflict, and this example was actually in Ms. Burroway's book, and I kept it because it's phenomenal. The old nun rose at dawn, feeling her pain in every joint. She'd been rising at dawn since her days as a postulant, kneeling on hardwood floors to pray. First, she raised the shade. That's creation out there, little green apples and infectious disease. You didn't expect that.
Contrast.
Right? Yeah. The infectious disease kind of comes up and slaps you in the face.
Yeah, after green apples especially.
Yes, exactly. She's a nun, she's praying. I mean, your expectation is, she's
peace.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I love that.
Sounds like she's blaming it on God.
Yeah.
Creation is out there.
Yeah, Don
Beginning
Willow
and
is
end. Yeah.
really good at this disharmony, this conflict between character and setting. So what that does when you have a little bit of disharmony or a little bit of conflict, it provides the makings of a story, right? You want to know more about that nun instantly. Like, who is this lady? It's not necessary to create a story, but it does make you instantly curious to learn more. So it's a tool you can use if you, especially in a hooking scene or at the beginning, if you really want to get somebody sucked in, it's something to think about. And remember, it's not the reader or writer's comfort with the scene. It's the attitude of the character.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last a few words on symbolic place, and then we may have to park and wait for this next half next time. Symbolic setting, Ms. Burroway advises, it's an advanced technique using the context of history, time of day, weather, seasons, and locale to give stories a sense of kind of largesse, right? Reaching out towards the universe. Using these elements as symbols to provide a story greater meaning is difficult, and it is not recommended for a novice writer. It requires that place, time, and other elements remain natural and convincing so they don't stand out, but they play a larger symbolic role, and they have the same status and energy as characters themselves. And I know I talked about this last time, but I would highly recommend reading Light Years by James Salter. He's a master at this, and he uses light and time of day as symbolic place. And you don't even pick it up. It's so natural and so convincing that you really don't notice it until you've read that book like a second or third time. And you're like, wait a minute, I know what he's doing here. So it's a really good example. And I think that takes us, yes, to aspects of narrative time, which we're not going to have time to go through. So we'll pick this up during our next meeting. Does anybody have any questions about the material?